you and your opponent, James Tallarico, debated a few weeks back. It was a pretty mild-mannered debate from both of you. Few policy differences, few jabs in any sort of policy direction. So I guess my question to you is, what is your message to Texas voters? How are you different than James Tallarico, and why should Texans trust you to be able to flip that seat?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Experience, and I think that that's the one thing that people kind of came away with in this particular race. You know, I currently serve on the federal level in the Congress. I am running to come back to the Congress, but just go to the upper chamber. And I think it does matter specifically in this moment to have someone who actually has experience. You know, when we dropped our issues page, we made sure that we didn't just drop what we wanted to do, but we dropped the things that I've been working on for quite some time. So that's number one. Number two, I think that it is important for us to be able to win. And so I know that there's been a lot of conversation around electability. There recently was a poll that came out just yesterday. And in that poll, it had me winning independents, it had me winning Republicans, it had me winning Democrats. And so all of this kind of talk about who can do what is a lot of noise, right? But overall, when we look at a majority minority state, and when we look at the coalition that is coming behind me, it is the Democratic coalition that we definitely need to be able to win. But also just experience overall. Like when we talk about resumes, Mr. Tallarico was a charter school teacher for about 2 years, and then he went into politics. And so he's been a state rep as well as a consultant for charter schools since then. For me, prior to getting into politics, I own my own small business. I practice law both on the state and federal levels, licensed in multiple states. When it comes down to the U.S. Senate, this is the only body that has the authority to actually put someone on a bench for a lifetime. So having that experience is invaluable. While, as well as people don't understand, I think maybe now that we've had some conversations around Ghislaine Maxwell, on yesterday, I sat in on that deposition. Depositions are not normally streamed on C-SPAN, but I've done that deposition. I've done Bill Barr. I've sat down and done a transcribed interview with Alex Acosta. I'll be in there with Bill and Hillary Clinton. I think this is one of those skill sets that is not out front, but it is a part of what we do, and so it uniquely qualifies me. And the final point that I'll make is that when it comes down to this particular race, I don't think money alone is going to be able to win it for Democrats. I just don't. We've tried that over and over and over. We've poured in $100 million. I argued that we needed someone who was already coming in with high name ID. And frankly, I'm kind of proving my point at this moment. We know that when you look at the Republican side, Senator Cornyn has spent over $50 million right now so far in his primary. And the most recent polling had him behind Ken Paxton, who only raised $1 million last quarter. When you look at our side of the ledger, my opponent has probably spent, between him and the super PAC that is supporting him, they've probably spent about $10 million so far since January, and I'm still ahead. We are going to need someone that can withstand, number one, a punch. I'm getting punched both from the left and the right. And we also need someone that can break through even if they don't have as much money, because while the Democrats spend $100 million, be clear, the Republicans will spend $200 million, right? Like they will always outpace us with money. So the question is, you know, who can break through even in the absence of all of that money? And I think a real fighter, someone that people know as a fighter. When we broke quorum in 2021, I was one of the lead architects in breaking quorum, but Mr. Tallarico ended up going back. And I think it is hard to gauge where people will stand at the when the biggest fights come about. And the only thing that I know as a state lawmaker, that was probably one of the biggest fights that I had, and he didn't stick it out at that point.
And, you know, Congresswoman, you're traveling the state all the time throughout this campaign, talking to voters. So I'm curious what it is you're hearing from them. What is the most important issue for Texas voters, and how do you plan to address it?
It's affordability, hands down. Now, the way that I talk about Texas is we're basically like our own little country. And we've got about 5 states within the state of Texas. The different regions have different personalities. And so, like, the emphasis on affordability, like the specifics may look a little different depending on where you are talking about. Obviously, in some of our bigger cities, definitely housing tends to be kind of at the very top of the list. Not that it's not on the list for other areas, but for other areas, it may be the food itself. So it's just kind of a ranking order. But it's housing, it's food, it's the pay as it relates to jobs. It is, especially when I'm going to the rural parts, it's our farming and our ranchers, right? Like our farmers and ranchers are filing record bankruptcies right now. And even when I was in Amarillo, standing with workers at Tyson is laying off about 1,700 folk at that plant. And the ripple effects are real. So it started with our ranchers who are struggling right now, especially once this administration decided to send $40 billion to Argentina to support them in combination with what's happening with the tariffs and other people going other places for their beef other than the United States. And so what happened is there wasn't enough to supply this Tyson plant. That meant that the Tyson plant needed to shut down because this was one of the beef processing plants. And it's my understanding that that plant may have supplied 400 Wendy's restaurants with their actual beef patties. And so these are ripples, and it is my goal to connect the dots for everyone who is urban and rural and suburban to understand that we are all connected, and we will do better once we recognize that and we stand unified. But it is affordability.
The latest poll, you touched on it earlier in your first answer, shows you up about 8 points on James Tallarico. 1 week to go now until at least early voting begins. There are though still there are still 12%, according to that poll, 12% of undecided voters. So one question is, do you think this race is closer than perhaps this polling suggests? And how do you convince those 12% that you are the choice?
I don't think it's closer. I actually think it's wider. We'll see. And I'll tell you, because my theory of the case is that we will bring people that normally don't participate into this election. And with that being said, we do some unorthodox things to be able to communicate to people that aren't necessarily in the bubble. And when you look at polling is always about the bubble. In fact, they will terminate the poll if someone says that they are not planning on voting, right? So for me, the question is, how do you gauge those people that typically don't vote? And so we'll see. So that's my theory of the case, is that we are currently expanding the electorate. We've had some anecdotal stories that make me believe that it's really happening, but we'll see once the numbers bear out. As it relates to the 12%, as I mentioned before, there's been about $10 million that's been spent so far since January against, either pro my opponent or in negative ads against me. We're just now spending. So we dropped about 1.4 million this week into media. And so we will see. But I think without spending to be ahead is a good position to be in. So now that we're spending, I think that we will be able to communicate to people and let them know that, we are running, and we're not just running physically, but being able to reach some of those people that I physically cannot get to. I think that that's going to be helpful. And frankly, I think the more that people see me in my natural element in DC, I think the more convincing it is. It's not something that you have to try to guess at what it will look like. We just had the Ghislaine Maxwell situation yesterday. Tomorrow, Pam Bondi will appear before my committee on judiciary. And so these are big issues, big figures. And, soon I'll be reviewing, the Epstein files as soon as the DOJ allows me in. They haven't quite allowed me in yet to review the unredacted files. So I think, the more that people see that I am able to handle the issues, whether it's going and seeing Liam Ramos and his dad and standing with my colleague, Joaquin Castro, as we demanded their release and then ultimately them being released, and staying on top of ICE in these facilities as we go through DHS funding, a DHS funding fight here in a second as well.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that your name ID is a lot, higher than James Tellerico. You're more well known. Uh, that can be good and bad depending on how you look at it. So my question to you is, what is one misconception about yourself that you think is out there that you'd want to clear up for voters who see the name Jasmine Crockett and maybe think something that you would want them not to?
Yeah, this is a great question. Numbers have borne out that the better you're known, I mean, you're going to get some people that don't like you. I mean, that's just what it is. But of the three people in this race, myself, as well as A.G. Paxton and Cornyn, we have the highest name ID. And we're right there neck and neck, the three of us. But I actually have the highest favorability, net favorability. So they're not very well liked overall. But what I will say is that if I was to tell people something that they don't know, it would be that I'm bigger than a meme, and that I do have substance, and that, memes and viral moments, they are just that. But I have the ability, and I do work across the aisle for the benefit of Texans all the time. But that doesn't go viral, right? It's not a viral thing to say that John Cornyn and I worked on something. It only becomes viral when A.G. Paxton decides to do an AI-generated video of the two of us dancing together, right? I mean, that's the only time that it's talked about. And so I do think that it's going to be really important as we continue to go through this election for me to kind of lay out a lot of the more boring things, the things that don't go viral, to talk about my work on ARPA H and how I worked with, at the time, the chair of appropriations, Kate Granger, to make sure that we could be one of the 3 states that receive one of those facilities. And these research dollars and jobs were coming right here to my district, the only Republican state to get one of these facilities. And when we worked on it, we worked to make the hub in Texas 30 in my district, but we put spokes all over the state of Texas. So even prior to running to be the senator or even thinking about it, I've always been thinking about and working for Texans all over the state. And I think that that's the real stuff that we want to get into, the real meat.
Okay, great. I have 2 more quick questions for you. I want to talk a little bit about immigration policy. As you know, SB 8 was passed here in Texas last year, went into effect effective January 1st, really compelling, forcing sheriffs and counties to enter into partnerships with ICE. It's no longer optional because of that law. So what role do you see Texas law enforcement having to play in federal immigration enforcement? And there are concerns that a law like that could lead to, things we're seeing in other parts of the country in terms of ICE overreach and mistreatment of even U.S. citizens. So if you could address SB 8 and what potential impact you think it might have on Texas, how you see it.
Yeah, so I think it's disastrous for Texas in general. And let me tell you why. And this isn't partisan. I know it probably sounds like it for me to start off and say that it's disastrous. But I can tell you that at least my local police departments are already stretched thin. In Dallas County, they have been down hundreds of officers that they need. And so if they now are basically mandated to go out and work and do the work of the federal government as well, then my question is, who is it that is investigating that murder or that aggravated robbery or that sexual assault? We know that right now they are stretched thin. I mean, we've had these conversations over and over about, our officers are not supposed to be the mental health worker as well as the police officer and that kind of stuff. So I also think that it basically puts a lot of additional strain on the administrators as it relates to recruitment, because there are some people that, from a very moral standpoint, do not want to participate in this type of activity. When they went to the police academy, they went to be law enforcement, to protect and serve their community. And when you're looking at what's taking place, they just may decide that they want to go into something else, or go to a department that's not in Texas. So I think that it presents a lot of challenges. Also, just from a very basic standpoint, just the idea that there is so much terror in our communities right now. I think that this may start to burn the bridge that the bridge of relationships that have been built with the local community. If our local officers are now engaging in tactics that, frankly, the community trusts them to not engage in. One of the things that I think is always been underrated is how much work needs to go into building a rapport with the citizens in the community that you're policing. And I think that it will start to break down a lot of that trust and instead create levels of animosity. Final point that I'll make on this is that I have a friend that is a federal officer and is a federal officer under DHS, but not an ICE officer. And things have gotten so bad that wearing that uniform, they now are like trying to change what they put on because they don't want to be associated as ICE officers because no one likes ICE officers, right? And, they are talking about how people are coming up to them angry and they're literally like, we have nothing to do with this, right? But it's all the same when people don't know in those uniforms. And I'm afraid of situations like that happening with our local law enforcement.
Congressman, I did want to ask you, last week, I believe the Democratic primary got a bit more heated. I'm sure you heard your opponent's comments, reported comments. He denies exactly saying those exact words or the context with which they were said. But your opponent reportedly called Colin Allred, who was in this race before, a quote mediocre black man, as he went on to compliment you. So, two questions on that front. Have you spoken to James Tallarico or Colin Allred about that situation? And what did you think when you heard it? And what should Texas voters do with that?
Yeah, so I have not spoken to James at all via text or on the phone. Colin Allred, I did text him. I know both of them. I have worked with both of them, and I've known Colin Allred since before either one of us were elected, as we were working to help other people get elected. That's how we met. I think it was Wendy Davis's campaign. I think that was the first one we met on. But yeah, I think it was Wendy Davis, and then we also worked on Hillary's campaign. And then when Colin ran, I volunteered on his campaign. So, I know Colin well enough to know that, number one, he's not just going to take some information and run with it, that he's going to vet it. And number two, anybody that knows Colin knows that he is a mild-mannered, guy. This is not a guy that gets, worked up. I mean, me, yes. Colin, no. So I did communicate with Colin to ask him if he was okay. And, he was just like, I mean, it's crap. And he told me that he believed it. This is before there was a statement that was made by the Tallarico team about the situation. And so, I put out a statement basically saying there's nothing mediocre about Colin Allred without saying the word mediocre, just laying out his extremely long list of qualifications that make him a fantastic kind of just human being in general. And so ultimately, there was a statement that came out by Mr. Tallarico, and in my reading of the statement, I was convinced, pretty much like Mr. Allred had been convinced, that this all took place. The fact that they wanted to point out that it was supposed to be a private conversation, which insinuates that you said something that would not necessarily be acceptable publicly, because you were like, this was supposed to be private, nobody was supposed to hear it, is one part of it. The time, place, and the person engaged in the conversation, he confirmed all of that, and he actually confirmed the specific word. And he said that he felt like it was misinterpreted or something like that, which to me was also a bit of a slight on the young lady that brought this to light. So, People can do with it what they want to. I hate that it took place in general. I do think that there are people that will be a bit nervous about what private conversations look like, maybe coming from that camp. But at the end of the day, like you and I talked about a little bit earlier, people want us to focus on them. They want us to focus on their issues. They don't want us to be distracted. And so I do want to be clear that I am focused on the real harms that are plaguing our communities. And when I'm in Texas, I'm trying my best to engage in those conversations. And when I'm not in Texas, I am trying to advocate on the federal level in DC for those issues, because it's one thing to say, pick me. It's another thing for me to show you in my actions who I am, and, being unafraid, unbought, and bold in this moment on behalf of the people. I think that ultimately that is what's going to win the day. And, ultimately we'll just kind of see how people feel about, those statements. But I do think knowing how important the African American community is to a Democratic coalition, it may present some problems at some point in time.
My final question for you is this interview will run consecutively back to back with the interview we did with your opponent, James Tallarico. It's set to run here in Houston on Monday, the day before early voting begins on the 17th, I believe. So, that'll be one of your last chances here, at least through media on our station, to communicate with voters who may see this interview. So what would you like them to know? What would be your final pitch to them before many of them go to the polls, on that Tuesday?
I want people to know that I'm mad as hell, just like you are. And I'm also scared. I'm scared for our present. I'm scared for our future. But that's not going to stop me. You know that I am battle tested. And frankly, to get past the Republicans, we're going to need someone that we know is battle tested, someone who has been ridiculed, someone who has been attacked, someone who has been demeaned, yet is still standing. We are going to need a warrior in this time. We are living in unprecedented times. And frankly, we can't afford to take a chance on someone who is not tested. We absolutely have to do everything that we can to make sure that we are sending our strongest into battle, because that's what this is going to be. The Republicans aren't going to let Texas just go blue. They are going to need to go after and attack and attack and attack. And well, you know how I deal with these attacks. You know that I am good about flipping them on their head. And frankly, whether it's John Cornyn or whether it's Ken Paxton, we know that they're both lawyers just like I am. But if it ultimately is Ken Paxton that becomes the nominee, then you have someone who has more experience writing federal legislation that would be in the driver's seat if you choose me as your nominee. If it's John Cornyn, you have someone that has worked hand in hand with him and is able to absolutely cut through the noise and be real about whatever it is that he's trying to sell as he goes through this general election. We have a real opportunity. This is about us and the future that we want for us. Don't let anybody take that away from us. Block out all the noise and focus on the issues. And anyone that doesn't want to talk about you and what matters to your family, then they're not qualified to even be running, if I'm being perfectly honest. We've got to make sure that everyone stays focused. We can't be divided in this moment. We've got to push through. We've got to win, because democracy is on the line. So when we flip this seat in Texas, we absolutely save the entire country. God bless you all.